You know what's funny about dating apps these days? Or maybe not funny, but brutally, painfully ironic? Every man's profile seems to scream for a woman who is drama-free, easygoing, and has no baggage. They want the finished product without any of the assembly. They want a woman who has lived, but bears no scars. I'm Alara. I'm 32, and according to the digital meat market of this city, I am the literal embodiment of baggage. The moment my story comes up, the one that explains why I'm a single mother with a trust me, I've learned my lesson expression. I'm either ghosted or relegated to the fun for now category. Damaged goods. But the truth is, the problem isn't that I have a past. It's that my past is a direct consequence of trying to escape a future that felt like a long, flat, featureless road stretching into nothingness. My story, the one that branded me, doesn't begin with a fiery explosion. It began with a slow, suffocating silence. 2 years ago, I was married to Graham. We were a textbook example of a sensible match. We met in our early 20s, dated through our post-college confusion, and married when I was 29. Why then? Because the biological clock wasn't just ticking, it was sounding a fire alarm. And Graham, well, Graham was stable. He was the human equivalent of a dividend-paying blue-chip stock. Reliable, predictable, and utterly without risk. He worked in finance in some glass tower downtown, doing something with spreadsheets that made his eyes light up and my mind go numb. I never truly grasped the details, and frankly, I never tried. My own work was administrative, done from the quiet solitude of our home office. It was a perfect arrangement, everyone said, because it allowed me to be there for our daughter, Paige, who was 8 at the time. I could manage the household, schedule the appointments, and still contribute to the family income. We were the picture of suburban success. A solid brick house, a well-tended garden, and a life built on the unshakable foundation of routine. And that routine, Graham's routine, was the thing that drove me slowly, methodically insane. I could set my watch by his existence. His car would pull into the driveway at exactly 5:47 p.m. Not 5:45, not 5:50, 5:47. He would walk in, kiss me on the cheek, a dry, passionless peck, and ask, "How was your day?" without waiting for an answer. Dinner was on the table by 6:30. Afterward, he'd help Paige with her math homework, his patience a thing of quiet marvel. Then, the television would flicker to life, broadcasting whatever sports game was in season, its monotonous commentary the soundtrack to our evenings. By 10:30, he'd be in bed, ready to repeat the cycle. Weekends were a blur of errands. Grocery shopping on Saturday morning, yard work in the afternoon. He'd get genuinely excited about a new type of fertilizer or a sale on motor oil. I once watched him spend 20 minutes explaining the benefits of his new lawnmower to our neighbor. His eyes shone with a passion I hadn't seen directed at me in years. Don't get me wrong. He was a good man, a wonderful father. He paid the bills before they were due. He never raised his voice. He remembered my birthday and our anniversary, marking them with sensible gifts, a new kitchen appliance, a gift card to a department store. He was everything a woman was supposed to want. Safe, reliable, present. But dear God, was he boring. Our marriage didn't feel like a partnership. It felt like a business arrangement where the assets were a child and a mortgage. Where was the spark? The spontaneity? Where was the man who once stayed up all night with me, just talking, because the thought of leaving each other was unbearable? He had been replaced by this automaton of responsibility. My escape came in the form of a brightly colored, pixelated world. I started playing online games. At first, it was just a way to fill the empty hours while Paige was in her virtual school sessions or when Graham was absorbed in one of his weekend projects. It was a simple distraction, but it quickly morphed into something more. It became a portal, a world where I wasn't just Graham's wife or Paige's mom. I was Alara, a skilled strategist, a witty teammate, someone whose opinion mattered. The gaming community was a vibrant tapestry of people from every corner of the globe. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I felt seen. People laughed at my jokes. They sought my advice on game tactics. They asked about my day and actually listened to the answer. Graham would barely look up from his phone when I spoke, his attention captured by stock market updates or sports scores. But these strangers, these disembodied voices and text bubbles, they made me feel alive again. They made me feel interesting. So yes, I started looking for excitement elsewhere. And at that moment, I didn't feel a single shred of guilt. What I felt was relief. Most of the men in the gaming community were harmless. They were boys in men's bodies, boasting about their virtual achievements or their real-world cars. The flirting was clumsy and transparent. I could deflect it easily. But then came Silas. He wasn't like the others. There was an economy to his words, a confidence that didn't need to shout. It was a quiet, commanding presence that drew you in, making you want to know the secrets he kept behind his carefully constructed sentences. He private messaged me after one particularly grueling, successful game session. My heart gave a little flutter, a nervous, teenage thrill I hadn't experienced in a decade. "You're not like the other players here," he wrote. "There's something about you." That was it. That was the key that unlocked everything. He noticed. While Graham saw a roommate who managed his household, Silas saw something about me. He paid attention in a way my own husband never did. Our private chats became a daily ritual, a secret garden I tended to during the hours Graham was at the office and Paige was at school. Silas told me about his life, or at least, the version of it he wanted me to see. He was experienced, he said, in ways most men weren't. He had particular tastes, a specific way of viewing the world. He spoke in a low, conspiratorial tone that made you feel like you were the only person on earth who could possibly understand his complex nature. "Most women can't handle what I need," he told me during one of our longer conversations, the words appearing on my screen like a secret confession. "They think they want intensity until they get it. But you're different. I can tell." And God help me, I believed him. After years of feeling like a household appliance, of being starved for a single crumb of genuine appreciation, his words felt like oxygen after drowning. Having someone see me as special, as different, was intoxicating. He explained his philosophy on relationships. He preferred structure, he said, clear expectations. He liked to be in control, and he needed a partner who could not only accept that dynamic but thrive in it. "It's not for everyone," he admitted, a calculated display of honesty. "But when it works, it's the most intense connection you can imagine." The stories he told were laced with a subtle poison. He spoke of other women he'd been with, how they had competed for his attention, how rewarding it was to be the one chosen by someone so discerning, so selective. That competitive angle should have been a screaming red flag, a warning siren in the fog. But, honestly, it excited me. Here was this man of the world, this connoisseur of women, who could have anyone he wanted, and he was interested in me. Me, the suburban mom in yoga pants whose most thrilling recent event was finding organic strawberries on sale. When he started laying out the mechanics of how his relationships worked, his expectation of availability, his system of rewarding good behavior, his zero tolerance for games or drama, it didn't sound controlling. It sounded clear. It sounded like being with a man who finally knew what he wanted, a stark contrast to Graham's passive acceptance of our life's gentle, boring current. Meanwhile, Graham remained completely, blissfully oblivious. He'd come home from work, deliver his perfunctory kiss, and ask about my day. I'd give him some vague, generic answer about laundry or Paige's school project. He never pressed for more. He never seemed to notice the new light in my eyes or the way I guarded my phone. His lack of curiosity about my inner world made it shockingly easy to carry on these long, emotionally charged conversations with Silas, often while Graham was sitting in the very same room, absorbed in his sports highlights. "Your husband sounds like a nice guy," Silas typed one evening. I had mentioned Graham in passing, a fleeting reference to my other life. But nice isn't what makes a woman feel alive, is it? And damn him, he was right. Graham was nice, Graham was safe. Graham was the sensible shoes you wear for comfort, not the stilettos that make your heart race. When was the last time Graham had made my heart race? I couldn't remember. The first time Silas asked me to prove my commitment, I assumed it would be something simple. Meet for coffee. Send a photo of my face. Normal affair stuff, right? But Silas wasn't interested in normal. "I want you to send me a video," he said during one of our late-night chats, the request hanging in the digital air between us. "Something that shows me you're serious about this." I hesitated. The line between fantasy and reality suddenly felt very thin, very fragile. He was quick to reassure me. "Nothing you wouldn't be comfortable with. Just something that's ours." That first video was tame, almost laughably so compared to what came later. But the rush I felt hitting send my finger trembling over the button was volcanic. Here I was, Alara, the PTA mom, doing something utterly reckless, dangerous, and just for me. It was my secret, my rebellion. When Silas responded, not with a simple thank you, but with genuine appreciation, with detailed feedback about what he liked, how it made him feel, I felt more seen and desired than I had in my entire marriage. You're a natural, he told me. Most women are so self-conscious. But you understand what this is about. You get it. And I did get it. Or I thought I did. This wasn't just about sex or breaking rules. This was about finally being seen. Truly, incandescently seen. That first video opened a floodgate. The requests from Silas began to escalate, slowly at first, then with increasing audacity. It was a masterful, gradual process, each step designed to push my boundaries just a little further, to normalize the risk until it felt like part of the thrill. First, it was about location. A video from the kitchen, then the living room, then our bedroom. His and my bedroom. The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. The risk was the point. Anyone can be brave when there's no risk, Silas would say. But this shows me who you really are. He made transgression feel like a virtue. Then came the specific outfits, the particular positions, the scripted words he wanted me to say. Each request was a new challenge, a new test of my devotion. The most dangerous were the ones tied to time. He wanted videos when the risk of discovery was highest during the sliver of time after Paige was home from school but before Graham arrived from work, or late at night when my husband was sleeping soundly just down the hall. My life began to revolve around these clandestine assignments. I became a master of logistics. Graham's predictable work schedule became my window of opportunity. Paige's playdates and after-school activities became my cover stories. I learned to calculate to the minute how long I had, what I could accomplish, and how to erase every trace before my two worlds collided. The planning, the secrecy, the sheer operational complexity of it all became almost as intoxicating as the acts themselves. I wasn't just a bored housewife anymore. I was a secret agent in my own life. The most intense, the most heart-stopping incident happened on a random Tuesday afternoon. Silas, who lived 2 hours away, told me he was driving to my city for a business meeting. He wanted to meet, not at a discreet hotel on the edge of town, but in his car. In my neighborhood. I want to be close to your real life, he texted, the words making my stomach clench with a mixture of fear and excitement. I want to know I'm right there, while your husband sits at home with no idea. I told Graham I was running errands the grocery store, the dry cleaner. A perfectly mundane lie. He grunted in acknowledgement from the couch, his eyes fixed on some financial news network. Be back in an hour, I said, my voice shockingly steady. I walked the 3 blocks to the agreed-upon spot, my pace casual, as if I were just out for a stroll. But inside, my heart was a drum solo against my ribs. It wasn't fear, not really. It was pure, uncut adrenaline. There he was, parked in a sleek, dark sedan I didn't recognize. The tinted windows hid him from view. Sliding into the passenger seat felt like stepping into another dimension. The air was cool, smelling of expensive leather and his cologne. Being with him, in the flesh, while Graham was literally sitting in our living room a few hundred yards away, was the most intensely alive I had ever felt. The risk wasn't just a possibility, it was a tangible presence in the car with us. The secrecy, the audacity of it, the knowledge that I was living a life so completely separate from the one everyone thought I had, it was a drug more potent than any other. Throughout our brief, frantic encounter, Silas kept whispering how brave I was, how special this connection was, how most women couldn't handle this level of intensity. He was narrating my rebellion back to me, framing my recklessness as a rare and beautiful quality. After he left, I walked back home, smoothing my hair, composing my face into a mask of placid domesticity. Graham was exactly where I'd left him, scrolling through his phone while the television droned on. "How were your errands?" he asked, his gaze not leaving the screen. "Fine," I replied, my voice a marvel of calm. "Got everything I needed." And in a twisted way, it wasn't a lie. That night, lying in bed next to Graham's sleeping form, his steady, rhythmic breathing filling the silence, I felt like I was splitting in two. There was daytime Alara, mom, wife, The woman who remembered to buy poster board for Paige's school project and schedule the car's oil change. And then there was the real Alara, the one who took risks, who was desired, who felt every nerve ending tingling with life. I had finally stopped just existing. I was living. I had no idea it was all about to burn down. The unraveling began on a Thursday morning in March. After months of successfully juggling my two lives, I'd gotten careless, cocky, really. The constant vigilance had faded, replaced by a comfortable confidence in my own cleverness. I had stopped being meticulous about deleting message threads, about clearing my browser history. The danger had become so normalized that I'd forgotten it was still danger. I was in the shower when it happened. Graham came into the home office, a room that was mostly my domain, looking for a phone charger he'd misplaced. My laptop was on the desk, open and sleeping. He must have nudged the trackpad, waking the screen. And right there, displayed in a neat column of notifications, was a preview of my secret world, a string of messages from Silas. When I came downstairs, wrapped in a towel, the air in the house felt different, colder, heavier. Graham was sitting at the kitchen table. My laptop was open in front of him. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't throwing things. He was just reading. Reading with the same quiet, detached focus he applied to a work email or a news article. "Alara," he said, his voice unnervingly calm. He didn't look up. "We need to talk." My first instinct was primal. Deny. Slam the laptop shut, create a storm of outrage, and lie my way out of it. But I knew it was useless. The evidence was right there. Months of conversations, photos, videos, our entire sordid history laid out in explicit, time-stamped detail. So I went on the offensive. "You went through my computer, Graham? That's a complete invasion of privacy." The words sounded hollow even to my own ears. He finally lifted his head and looked at me. His expression wasn't the one I'd braced myself for. It wasn't the devastation of a betrayed husband or the white-hot fury of a man wronged. It was just tired, an exhaustion so profound it seemed to have settled deep in his bones. "Privacy?" he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Alara, you've been having an affair for 4 months. You sent this man videos from our daughter's school event, from our bedroom." The way he said it, so matter-of-fact, like he was reading a grocery list, made me angrier than if he had started screaming. I needed a reaction. I needed a fight. His clinical detachment was a mirror showing me how grotesque my actions were, and I couldn't stand it. "You don't understand," I shot back, my voice rising with a desperate defensive tremor. "You never understand anything. Do you have any idea how lonely I've been? How completely ignored I've felt for years?" He looked down at the screen, then back at me. "So, you decided to film yourself with another man in our driveway, while I was upstairs helping Paige with her homework. That was your solution to feeling lonely?" His voice never rose above a conversational level, which somehow made it all the more brutal. He was dissecting my choices, laying them bare on the kitchen table between us. I wanted him to show some passion, to fight for me, to prove he cared enough to be angry. Instead, he just kept scrolling, his face a mask of clinical observation. I wasn't his wife in that moment. I was a problem to be analyzed and solved. He finally closed the laptop, the soft click echoing in the silent room. He stood up. "I'm calling a lawyer today, Alara," he said, his tone final. "I'll sleep in the guest room until we figure out living arrangements. We need to tell Paige something age-appropriate, and we need to figure out custody logistics." Oh, the words hit me like a physical blow. "Wait, what?" "Graham, we can work through this. Couples survive affairs all the time. I made a mistake, but we can fix this." The words came out automatically, a desperate plea from a script I didn't even believe in. He picked up the laptop, holding it as if it were Exhibit A. "Work through this?" he repeated, a flicker of something not anger, but maybe profound disappointment crossing his face. "Alara, you've been living a completely separate life for months. You have been lying to my face every single day. What exactly do you think we are going to work through?" He walked out of the kitchen, leaving me standing there, dripping water onto the cold tile floor, my world cracking into a million silent, irreparable pieces. My first action after Graham left the room was a panicked, fumbling message to Silas. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type. I explained what had happened, my words a jumble of fear and desperation. I asked him what we should do. I was still thinking in terms of we. His response came back almost instantly, a single, chilling sentence. This is exactly the kind of drama I said would happen if you got careless. That was it. No, I'm so sorry this happened. No? Are you okay? No. Let's figure this out together. Just a cold, sharp rebuke. Disappointment not for my plight, but that I had failed to manage the situation, that I had created a mess that now threatened to touch him. I tried to call him. The call went straight to voicemail. I sent a flurry of follow-up messages, my desperation escalating with each one. I told him I was willing to leave Graham. I was serious about choosing him, about our intense, special connection. His final response was a masterpiece of emotional detachment. I think you misunderstood what this was. I was very clear about my boundaries from the beginning. Reading that message felt like being slapped across the face. Months of you're special and you understand me like no one else, and our connection is so intense, and suddenly I had misunderstood. What are you talking about? I typed back, my fingers flying across the screen. You said I was different. You said what we had was meaningful. His reply was the nail in the coffin. It was fun. But I told you from day one that I don't do drama. Your husband finding out is drama. And just like that, he was gone. Blocked on all platforms. His phone number, when I tried it again, was disconnected. 4 months of daily communication, of feeling desired and understood and alive, ended with the emotional equivalent of a shrug. I wasn't a partner. I was a game he'd been playing, and now that the game was over, he had simply put the controller down and walked away. Meanwhile, Graham was approaching our separation with the same methodical precision he applied to his spreadsheets. He was documenting everything. Screenshots of my conversations with Silas. Timestamps of when I'd claimed to be at the store versus GPS data from my phone showing I was miles away. Financial records highlighting money I'd spent on lingerie and other items that were clearly not for his benefit. The divorce proceedings were swift and brutal, though not in the way I'd expected. Graham wasn't trying to destroy me out of spite. He was simply protecting himself and Paige with a cold, logical efficiency. His lawyer presented a comprehensive timeline of my affair, complete with my lies, my financial deceptions, and most damning of all documentation, of times when my obsession with the affair had directly impacted my parenting. There was the afternoon I'd been so engrossed in a video call with Silas that I'd forgotten to pick Paige up from her friend's house until her friend's mother called me, an hour late. The financial settlement was, by legal standards, fair. But in reality, it was devastating. Graham kept the house, the stable environment for Paige. I received half of our savings account and the responsibility of finding my own place to live. My part-time, work-from-home income was barely enough to afford a small, cramped apartment in a less desirable part of town. The life I had taken for granted had vanished. The social fallout was almost worse. In our tight-knit suburban community, word spread like wildfire. Graham wasn't malicious about it. He didn't go around bad-mouthing me. But he also didn't lie. When people asked what happened, his standard response was apparently a simple, factual statement. Alara had an affair. Not mean, not detailed. Just the truth. And that truth was enough to make me a pariah. Our mutual friends, forced to choose sides, gravitated toward Graham. He was the stable one, the victim, the one with the house and the consistent parenting schedule and no drama. I was the one who had blown up her family for a phantom lover who wouldn't even take my calls anymore. I was the cautionary tale whispered about at neighborhood barbecues I was no longer invited to. Paige, bless her resilient heart, handled the divorce better than I did. Graham made a Herculean effort to keep her routine and life as stable as possible, but I could feel her pulling away from me. It was subtle at first, shorter phone calls, a preference to spend an extra night at her dad's. I had introduced chaos into her world, and she, like her father, craved stability. I had not only broken my husband's heart, I had broken my daughter's trust. And that was a price I hadn't even begun to calculate. A year and a half after the divorce was finalized, I told myself I was ready to start dating again. The truth was, I was just lonely. The silence in my small apartment was a physical presence, a constant reminder of everything I had lost. I missed having a partner, someone to talk to at the end of the day. I was tired of spending every evening that Paige was at Graham's alone, scrolling through other people's happy lives on social media. But dating as a divorced, 32-year-old single mom with my particular history turned out to be its own special circle of hell. The first few men I matched with seemed promising. The initial chats were light and fun. But inevitably, we'd arrive at the "what ended your marriage?" conversation. The moment I pieced together the timeline for them, the atmosphere would shift. "So you cheated," one said. It wasn't a question, but a flat statement of judgment, a label that instantly redefined me. Some men saw it as an opportunity. If I'd cheated once, then clearly I was a woman with loose morals, up for anything. They'd push for sex on the first date, make crude jokes about what I must be into, and treat me like I was a bargain bin item who should be grateful for any attention at all. Damaged goods. Others went in the opposite direction, treating me with a kind of cautious disdain, as if I were carrying a moral contagion. "I'm really looking for someone with traditional values," one man told me gently, as if letting me down easy. "Someone who understands commitment." The irony was a knife twisting in my gut. The few relationships I did manage to start sputtered out within a few months. There was always an issue. My custody schedule was too complicated. They were intimidated by my past sexual experience, which they imagined to be far more exotic than it was. They found me too intense or, that dreaded word, had too much baggage. Meanwhile, through the grapevine of Paige's innocent chatter, I learned that Graham was doing just fine. Better than fine. He had a new girlfriend, someone he'd met through work. She was apparently wonderful with kids and had never been married. She came with no complicated history, no emotional wreckage in her wake. "She's really nice, Mom," Paige told me one weekend, her voice bright. "She makes these cookies that look like flowers, and she knows how to braid hair in this cool way that looks like a waterfall. Perfect." Of course. Graham had found himself a nice, uncomplicated woman who made flower-shaped cookies and did fancy braids. A woman who probably found his methodical lawn-mowing routine charming instead of soul-crushing. A woman who represented everything I hadn't been. But here's what truly gnawed at me. Everyone, it seemed, viewed Graham's new happiness as the final verdict on our marriage. It was proof that I had been the sole problem all along. The fact that he could move on and build something healthy meant that our marriage had failed entirely because of my selfish, destructive choices. No one wanted to consider the nuance. No one wanted to acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, Graham had learned from our relationship too. Maybe he was putting more effort into romance with his new girlfriend because he'd seen the devastating consequences of taking a partner for granted. But no, the narrative was simple and clean. Graham was the perfect husband wronged by his cheating wife. Villains and victims. 6 months into Graham's new, happy relationship, I was still struggling, still living in my cramped apartment, still working longer hours just to make ends meet, still dealing with the social shrapnel from a bomb I'd detonated 2 years earlier. And the worst part? The part I would never admit to anyone? Sometimes late at night, when the city was quiet and sleep wouldn't come, I still thought about Silas. Not because I wanted him back. I could see him clearly now for the predator he was. A user who had preyed on my loneliness and low self-esteem. But I thought about those months with him because they were the last time I had felt truly, viscerally alive. The last time I had felt desired. The last time I felt like I was me, instead of just someone going through the motions of an acceptable life. Which probably made me exactly as pathetic as everyone thought I was. But at least I had felt something real. Even if the foundation of that feeling was a complete and utter lie, that's more than I could say for the years I spent pretending Graham's predictable, reliable routine was enough to build a life on. Everyone wants simple stories. But real life is messy. Real marriages don't just explode. They die slowly, from 1,000 tiny cuts of neglect, of taking each other for granted, of letting passion fade into the quiet hum of the dishwasher. I wasn't proud of how I'd handled things, but sitting there, alone in my apartment 2 years after my world fell apart, I had to admit that my desperate, reckless plan to find something better hadn't just failed. It had left me with nothing at all.